I work a lot with senior players, and I also work a lot with 3, 4 and 5 year olds, and believe me, there are some similarities, but there are also lots of differences. When I work with the very young ones, it's really important that they know that I care about them and their development. How can I show that? I make a point of speaking with each one of them personally, and also try to remember something that we may have chatted about in the past, and I'll remind them about it. I certainly don't make the assumption that they are so focused on listening to me and doing everything I want that that becomes the focus for their whole world. It's not like that.
Relationships with the students that I coach are very, very important. They have to know about me as a person, and I have to know about them as a person. I have to know what makes them tick, what makes them smile, what makes them engage in any kind of activity. I also would like to think that in some shape or form that I make them feel special in terms of talking to them, just a simple good morning to the students, or just saying something about them. And more often than not, I think the relationships that I have within this environment are positive and are really good, and something that I'm really, really proud of. When we're dealing with any kind of group, a communication is really, really vital, especially in a special educational needs environment. The first thing is we have to look at how fast we speak. The second thing that we have to look at is what kind of vocabulary that we use, in terms of everything for our children has got to be concrete, and we've got to make sure that they have some kind of understanding of what's going on. Your hoop drops onto the floor. A lot of the time you'll see a lot of staff moving their hands around, so there's a lot of signals, and sometimes we don't do a lot of talking, and that we show the children what we want them to do and show them possible ways in which they could do it. Communication is important as well. They have to we have to make communication as positive as possible. And if anybody cheats, we'll make you wear knickers next week. Right, you ready? In a space with a who?
I'm also very conscious that I will alter the speed or the tone of my voice to make sure that the children understand. And it's not like I'm slowing everything down, but I'm being very precise. So it's, would you and you go and stand over there. And I think another important thing for the coach to remember is the word try. Because if I say to a young player, try to do this, then I'm setting the expectations, and then I can give feedback as to how good their try was. But it also gives the child an exit route if they don't want to try it. Yeah. So I'm really trying to manage their expectations, but also give them the image that I'll actually work with you and push you how far you want to go, really. So I've started using the word try to a lot more than I want you to do this, because it just changes the dynamic of the whole coaching situation, really.
I think the key to working with groups is to make sure that you're engaging with the whole group, and that can be really difficult when you're working with children because they're so easily distracted. So making sure that we provide reasonably succinct messages that they can hear, but that we reinforce those with things like demonstrations. We get the kids up and moving and practicing quite quickly so that we don't lose their focus. And I know for me that's a real challenge because I literally could talk them to death, but it's really important that we give them some short, sharp messages, and then we reinforce those messages through practice. And then we can repeat those messages whilst they're practicing, so that they start to play those things over and over in their heads, so they're developing that kind of mental understanding alongside that kind of physical and locomotive understanding.
One of the things that the coach must mention to the player if they're doing demonstrations, they must appreciate that what it looks like for me might not be exactly the same for you. And so one of the things that I try to get the kids to think about is, this feels right for me. So when I do it, it feels good. might not look or feel exactly that way for you, so you have to find your own way of doing it. But we want the outcome to be the same. So when I do it, this is the outcome. When you do it, it might look and feel slightly different, but if the outcome's right, then that's great for you. And I think that's another way of empathising with the young player, and also understanding that I don't want to be a clone of me. I want them to develop their own, technique and their own understanding of how it all fits and works together.
It's really hard to make sure that everybody gets something out of whatever experience or whatever activity that you're doing. I think you need to, as a coach, you need to be looking at the level that the children are at. You need to be looking at the past experiences, whether they're positive or whether they're negative. You need to have some kind of idea about where you think the activity is going. You need to be explaining and demonstrating to the children what you think, what your viewpoint of it looks like, or what your outcome looks like. And you need to make sure that you've got lots of things where you can think out of the box, the toolkit of having different ideas that you can bring out of your head, or different kinds of equipment to differentiate an activity to suit all your needs.
And certainly within my setting, we tend to challenge children rather than just let them float along, if you like.
Yeah.
And I think it's the box of tricks. One of the things that we found, as we were talking about before, is that things like communication and not talking as much, and showing the children what we want them to do and how we want them to do it, and then letting them find the pathway into to achieving what they need to do in a session.
Interestingly, I think that point about communication is so important, because over-verbalisation in coaching kills learning. And I think coaches used to think they were paid by the word, and that if they weren't speaking all the time, then clearly they weren't coaching. And I think it's really a powerful thing to do, is to actually coach without saying anything.
No, I think you're right.
And there's a lot achieved doing
Yeah.
And sports people are kinesthetic learners, aren't they? They learn kinesthetically. They don't listen, as you said before, Alan, about to a certain amount what the coach or what the parents are saying. It's what they see and how they go on to perform what the information, they process the information that you've given them.
I think it's quite threatening if we send out a message to young coaches who want to work with children about talking less, because my first thought would be, well, what am I doing when I'm not talking? And I think the message I would like to send out is that you're actually working harder because you're observing exactly what is going on. And if your observation skills are improving and being refined, you're then better placed to actually give the help when it's needed and in the most appropriate way. So I think, as a general rule, if we observe more and talk less, we could be actually more effective when we're coaching.
And our feedback would just be much more
Definitely.
powerful.
Yeah. The activities that you set, the conversations that you have with the children, your body language if you're working with the whole group, with the gestures and the eye contact that you make with them, it's so very important. But it's something that you can't always get from a coaching course. But I think if we can heighten that awareness for young coaches, that when they go into their first few sessions where they're testing the water, if they're aware of what they say, how they stand, what they do, how they interact with the children, if they can understand how important that is, I think they're going to make a massive connection very early on and very quickly with the children. That makes that imparting of knowledge of their particular activities so much easier. But I think we went straight into the knowledge bit and we neglected where the child was at or what they actually needed, and I think that was a big mistake.